The Wizard King is old and frail. After eons on the throne, he has made a final journey to survey his realm. Now he returns for the last time to his tower, wherein lies the magic that makes one wizard supreme over all others. For captured within is a magical power of transformation that allows a creature to enter the tower as oneself and emerge as another. An elf of the forests may be transformed into an ogre of the mountains. A warrior from the plains may become a skeleton of the swamps. Each of these creatures has his own special powers, special strengths, and special fears. The Wizard King sets his foot at the base of the ramp of time and prepares to begin his final ascent up the 15 steps to the tower. He has but one thought. Which of his 4 apprentice wizards, Terra, Zephyron, Solanos, or Osinius, will use the tower's magic most strategically and prove himself on the field of battle? For the wizard who demonstrates the strongest powers and wins the most pennants will succeed him. The moment the Ancient One steps onto the tower, the apprentice will become the next Wizard King. Welcome home, brave heroes. I'm Ash, this is HashQuest, and today we look at Tower of the Wizard King. Game made in 1993 by Parker Brothers. Now we'll get to the actual unboxing later, or rather the reboxing, because that's something. The Tower of the Wizard King is a game for 1 to 4 players, and contrary to what the turn tracker here might imply, our old and frail Wizard King, who looks absolutely wonderful, by the way, starts out on the first step and only advances up the ramp of time 1 space at a time when you use the tower to transform your character for battle. That's the selling point of this game, by the way. The tower, the central figure here, is not just a sculpted centerpiece, an object of conversation, a piece of eye candy. No, it has mechanical function, and it's quite an impressive mechanical function too. Let's demonstrate it on the finely sculpted dwarf character. Say goodbye to the dwarf. This is the last time we're going to see him. You merely open the door, place your character on the inside with the base. There's no need to say magic words. The tower has all the magic we'll need. Pull the lever at the side once or twice, your choice, and open the door out. Oh no, it's audio. You're not supposed to see that. Hold on, wait a minute. Come on, go. My tower seems to be stuck. 1 second. It is at this point I would point out a potential problem with the game. Nothing's built quite like 90s toys with some sort of machination involved. In fact, that absolutely should have its own like little quote, like, you know, it's Ford tough. Nothing's built like a 90s toy. The bad part about it being for the 90s is that it's now up to 30-ish years old. The good part is that we can probably fix this. Although I think it has more to do with the fact that we have these boards stuck in the side. And that's a legitimate part of the scenery. That's how this is all supposed to be immersive, but I just think it's agitating. It's agitating the mechanics a little bit. All right, there's a dwarf in there now, once more with feeling. Yes, yes, the dwarf has become, and you'll notice still on the green base here, the dragon. You're actually supposed to pull the tab out underneath. That will greatly assist you in removing your character. All right, so now we have a dragon. Complaint number 2, the amount of manhandling you have to give the actual pieces on the board mean that this whole thing's going to be a wreck here momentarily. We have another character that I'd like to show you, and I'm actually going to show you all the characters because why wouldn't I? This is the orc, and a finely sculpted orc he is. I really like the chainmail on this guy and the sword held over the head. This is a classic orc pose for me. Something nostalgic about it, couldn't tell you why. The colored bases are very important because any of the players, the 4 wizards of the game, can control any of these 4 characters as long as it's their color, their turn to control them, so to speak, because the dwarf turned into a dragon. The dwarf is going to be the green player in this case. So Terra, you can kind of think of this as Magic the Gathering, in which you have wizards, but you are controlling different things to make those wizards effective in the battle. In the great battle of wizards that is taking place. All right, orc inside the tower, and then, oh yeah, that felt right. The orc has become the Minotaur. I'm gonna pull the tab out. That actually worked. That worked okay. The Minotaur. Oh, that's not the Minotaur, that's the ogre. We're looking at an ogre now. Why do ogres always look like this? They always look like, yes boss, more work. Look at the hair on this guy. It's not that it's back hair, or maybe it is. It's that it's long hair. His long hair goes over his humped back down the back. He's got a club with a spike in it. Guy is absolutely menacing. Now on your next turn, should you decide to change your character, you can, and if you want to engage in battle with another wizard player's character, you can decide to change your character before you do that. But why would you want to change your character when you are an amazing skeleton? This guy is awesome. Man, whoever was doing the sculpts for this game really understood the assignment. I'd hire them in a heartbeat. They did a great job. Even with sculpts where it didn't seem like they had a whole lot to work with, they were like, here, you have this much plastic, this much time, go. This is a fine representation of a dragon. All right, skeleton, in you go, all the way in. We've got our blue player wanting to change now. This is what everybody's here for. And then open up. The skeleton has become the Minotaur. And that actually hurts. We need to install something, some kind of mod there to help that out. The Minotaur looks really great in this as well. He is taking on a great game piece playing stance. Actually, very recognizable, easy to kind of role play. I'm a Minotaur. I was one of Hercules' 12 labors, I think. All right, it's the yellow piece's turn next, and the yellow piece is an elf, because an elf is a represented character in every single 90s and late 80s tabletop board game that has any sort of fantasy element. And of course, the elf is going to have a bow. You know what? I think HeroQuest might be one of the only times an elf did not just have a bow. All right, so we put him into the tower all the way, and the reason I'm showing you this is because I have to, for you to be able to see all 8 of the miniatures that come with the Tower of the Wizard King. And this is the Warrior. Yeah, this is probably not the most epic one to finish our figurine photo shoot on, but it still goes without saying. It's a good sculpt. It's a mandatory character in a fantasy game, most fantasy games. And that's it. Now, anybody who wants to play the next character, and if you've been counting cards at this point as a player, you'll know who is going to be in the tower is going to be a dwarf very next because of the singular piecemeal revolutions that are happening inside. But it would be easy to lose track if the players were going to hit that lever more than once and mentally map out which character is going to be in each of the 5 positions within this tower. By the way, this right here is what helps separate the figure from the base. The base doesn't travel with the figure inside the tower. The tower essentially picks up the figure, spins it around, and puts the next one back down, if that wasn't overwhelmingly obvious. But I showed this mechanism to my teenage son, and he was like, what? So maybe it's not obvious to everybody all the time after all. But the point that I was about to make is that any of the players, if it's their turn, can put their character in here and transform into the next one. So there's another player now who doesn't necessarily have to be the original dwarf player that will now be able to play the dwarf. At the end of the day, you're not playing these characters as your mains. You're playing the wizards who don't have representation on the board other than the characters that you transform into. So this game is pretty cool, but it's pretty simple. It's kind of a control territory type of game. It's not really a dungeon crawler in any sense of the word. It's a land crawler. Now, every time that we did that, we should have been advancing our decrepit and frail Wizard King up the ramp of time. And if you'll notice, there are these wizard tokens that the Wizard King will share space with when he advances. And as we do move the Wizard King up to share space with the token, we will take this token, flip it over, and follow its instructions. Spell of transport, swamp or forest, thereby transporting our hero character to one of those 2 spots of our choice. It's actually multiple spots on the board. Let me explain the board now. The board has 4 biomes, and there are 4 different wizards that represent 4 different elements. Terra, the wizard of the earth. Solanos, wizard of fire. Zephyron, wizard of the wind. His hat is just epic. Awesome fashion choices here. And Osinius, wizard of the water. Setup starts with multiple castle tokens that are color-coded to each of the 4 wizards being placed on biomes for that color. In other words, the orange castles are going to go on the sand terrains only. The purple castles are going to go on the mountainous biomes only. There's not enough tokens to fill up the entire board, so when you do run out of tokens of that color, you stop, and after you have placed all of the castle tokens down, you'll have several spaces on all 4 colors left over, and that's where the remaining 15 spell tokens come into play. These get placed down in those blank spots. When you begin a game, you will have every single space on the board with a token, and every single castle will get one of these castle miniatures placed on top. Now, there are several holes in the top, and it is in these holes we will place pennants as we achieve objectives in the game, including winning at combat. We've got our pennants right here, and the object of the game, which bafflingly takes 9 pages to get to because of all the setup, is to have the most pennants of your wizard's color on the castles you have conquered by the time the Wizard King arrives on the top of his tower and ends the game. Now, I won't demonstrate putting the pennants into the castles. I'm just going to skip by all of that. Every single character has their own card apart from the wizard cards, and this will include the character's name, a lovely profile picture, how many spaces they can move up to each turn. We don't roll to move in this game. If you're the Minotaur, you can move up to 2 spaces each turn. You are totally allowed to pass through other characters, and you are allowed to come back to a space that you previously landed on, so you could definitely do like a 1-2. You can't land on a space occupied by another character. All 4 of the characters, or however many are going to play the game, start off on this lovely rocky space that surrounds the tower, and you are allowed to move onto any of the territories that are adjacent to it when you start the game. We have a couple of cave illustrations on the board, one right here, and since I said a couple, of course there's more than 2, one right here, and one right here, and you can move between caves to get to other places quickly. Moving from cave to cave counts as 1 space. Some characters have special rules involving caves. But we were looking at the monster cards or the character cards, so we'll go back to that. You have different characteristics per character, and this is what makes it advantageous to change characters, especially if you can remember who's in the tower and at what position. Your Minotaur characteristics, for example, are fearless against skeletons and orcs and afraid of elves. The fearless and afraid is just a shorthand way of letting you know who's going to have the advantage in combat. We have a combat strength table that is printed on every single character's card, and the numbers are the exact same as far as relativity to those different characters from yours. For example, the Minotaur is going to roll 3 dice in a test of combat against a dragon, but a dragon's going to roll 4. If we go cross-reference that with the dragon card, it's going to agree. The dragon's going to roll 4 dice, the Minotaur is going to roll 3. So you're never going to get conflicting numbers across battles. But when we say that the Minotaur is fearless against skeletons and orcs, it's because the Minotaur gets to roll 5 dice against an orc's 2, or 5 against a skeleton's 3. Afraid of elves, the Minotaur only rolls 2 dice against the elf's 5. So we have a little bit of a rock, paper, scissors situation here. But more than that, we do have special powers. The Minotaur may move up to 2 spaces immediately after exiting Forest Cave. If token or opponent's castle is at Forest Cave's mouth, do not act on it, just keep moving. And Minotaur's den is in the forests. The warrior here is fearless against dragons, which means he's going to roll advantage against a dragon, 5 versus 2, and is afraid of skeletons for some reason. He's going to roll 2 versus a skeleton's 5 dice. His special power is that he may place 2 pennants on a castle when defeating a skeleton. And they just kind of keep going like this. There are some different rules that apply to each of the characters that would be very handy to have, but are situational. The dragon can only move up to 1 space each turn, but can fly over rivers, doesn't need to cross the bridge. You may have noticed the bridge that are going over river in this games. All of the other characters, except for the dragon and for some reason the skeleton, have to use the bridges to cross the water. I'm assuming the skeleton doesn't have to because he doesn't have to breathe, so he just goes into the water and just walks through the actual water nice and slow until he comes out the other side all nice and clean. Here's the skeleton, moves up to 4 spaces each turn. He can only cross rivers that separate swamps. Okay, that's interesting. Skeleton's tomb is in the swamps. Dwarf's dwelling is in the mountains. Orc's cavern is in the plains. Elf's camp is in the forests. Minotaur's den is in the forest. I think we've looked at all 8. Those are their advantages, disadvantages. So what's the gameplay like? Well, combat is done using dice. Number of d6 is what matters here. Let's say we're going to use the Minotaur to fight against an elf. And here comes complaint number 2. We don't have a lot of actual gameplay space that is reusable, which means this whole thing is going to take up your table. If you roll dice on it, you risk the problem of knocking over towers or miniatures or dislodging tokens from their spaces, knocking the Wizard King off of the ramp of time, and all of your dice are the same color, so you can't exactly like roll them together in a singular dice tray or dice tower. Solutions: 2 dice trays, or 1 dice tray, but you take turns rolling. You're gonna have to remember what you roll though, because Minotaur's got 2 dice versus the elf's 5. We'll just go ahead and roll on the board. Highest die wins the combat. That's all there is to that. In case of a tie, the second highest die wins the combat. With the Minotaur having a 5 and the elf not having any 5s or above, the Minotaur wins this battle despite having a disadvantage. Let's do another combat real quick. We have a 4 and a 3, but the elf has a 6, so the elf wins, and that's all there is to that. If the Minotaur had had a 6, then these two dice would have canceled each other out, and we go to the next highest dice. This is great if the elf rolled a 5 and a 6, or 2 6s, but it would be very bad if the elf rolled a single 6 and then all 1s. So as you can see, even characters against whom you have an advantage can be a real threat to your character. Choose your battles wisely. Anyways, if you land on a space with a token, turn it over and act accordingly. Hey look, it's a spell of transport. Fly to any space. Squaw, squaw. If it's another wizard's token, you must do battle with the player who is that wizard. Hiya, that's a spell. These are all spells. You may change your form before the battle and move the wizard king. The victor takes ownership of that castle and places one pennant of his wizard's color on one of its towers. So the dragon has moved on to this space. There's a castle, there's a token. We flip that over. It's green. This is the color of Terra. If I am playing as Terra, this is my token. I'm going to take it. I'm going to add a green pennant to the castle, and there's one of my pennants. But if I was any other wizard controlling this dragon, for example, Osinius, and I moved here, I would have to do battle with the player controlling Terra using the stats of that wizard's character. So there's your random element. Sometimes you don't get to choose who you're doing battle with. Now there are a lot of castles, there's a lot of territories, a lot of spaces, but the wizard continuously moves up the track. So one player could really just advance the wizard moving up by constantly changing characters every turn. If you want to play a short game, the game will last at most 15 turns as long as somebody is changing their character every turn. If everybody's doing it every single turn that they can, then the game will be over in, I think, 4 rounds. Once the Wizard King enters the tower, the top space, the game ends as he proclaims, "The wizard player with the most pennants on all his castles is the victor and ascends the throne. All hail the new Wizard King." The general strategy here outlined on the winning page is to explore uncovered territories to find the special tokens, such as home castles, that help you gain an advantage over the other players. Attack your opponents to increase your strength, represented by your total number of pennants, and decrease your opponent's strength. Use your power of transformation wisely. It is important to change at the right time. And the player who takes advantage of all the opportunities will be victorious and will be the one who ascends the throne of the Wizard King. There are further explanations in the book for how to use the spells. There are home castles, what kinds of advantages you'll have if you are defending a home castle, how many pennants you add if you are turning over a token and reveal that you've landed on the home castle of the character that you are at the moment. There is a variation of the game for 2 players, where if you land on a missing wizard's power token, well, one of the 2 wizards that you remove from the game, you'll just battle the other player. It probably wasn't even necessary to have that, but I'm actually appreciative that they did consider what might happen if a game is missing one of the players. I mean, that's how you get to say the game is for 2 to 4 players. There's a variation here for 3 players, and if you land on one of the missing wizard's power tokens, you'll declare which one of the other 2 characters you'll do combat with. There's also a page of short rules. This isn't like a short version, it's just a summary in one place to remind you really quickly of the fundamentals. 2 pages of that, actually, 3 pages of that, actually. It makes me wonder if they really needed all that space for the simple rules. But that's Tower of the Wizard King. It's eye candy, it's nostalgia, it's very commanding visually. And now we're going to talk about the box. Let me just get everything grouped back together. Okay. I just want you to appreciate how much space Tower of the Wizard King's box takes up in my gaming collection. That might even not be a wise place to put the box because of how little is actually in the box. I could probably stand it upright and place it on top of a shelf and free up that valuable gaming real estate. Welcome home, brave heroes. I'm Ash. This is Tower of the Wizard King. Just kidding. The tower transforms you and changes your powers for battle. I mean, what a lovely box art. Absolutely stunning. And there's a little infographic on the side here that represents the knight becoming the orc. And then here's your kids, the same kids that are on the back of every single box having fun. This is another point of contention I had for this game. I don't know that your players are necessarily all going to be behind the screen where it's least accessible to reach in and pick up the characters. I think that you'd want to play kind of in front of it. I realize this is an illustration for marketing purposes and therefore is not relevant in any sense of the word, but you don't really have a lot of space just in front of the board on one side, so somebody's going to be behind the tower. I guess I would argue that being behind the tower means that you are closest and able enough to hold the tower down to pull the lever, which seems to be pretty necessary to do, but look at all of the extra space on the table you're going to need that you can't repurpose or reuse for the actual gameplay. Anyway, this massive box, well, it has to be large because it has to fit the board and it has to fit the tower. And the tower cannot be disassembled. It's just a shame because after we place absolutely everything back into this box, the cards, the tokens, the playing pieces, pennants, castles, dice, it looks like this. I mean, there's so much dead space. So much dead space in that box. It's like, I can't afford this game. What, you mean the money? No, not the money. I can't afford the space that this game takes up. Look, don't be too horrified at my storage methods for this game, okay? That was just for illustrative purposes. Look at this dwarf becoming this dragon. He's just like, I don't think I even realized that there was a dwarf intermission change picture here. That's great. Wish they could have done a couple more of the characters in the background. But that's Tower of the Wizard King, available at your local eBay, and if you're like 1 in a million lucky, at better thrift stores near you. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, you must have liked it, so please consider checking out the perks you might get from being a YouTube member or a Patreon member down below. Comment whatever you like. No, not the statement, whatever you like, but whatever you, the viewer, would like to comment. It really helps push the videos out to others who might enjoy them. Thank you again, brave heroes, and I'll see you on the next exciting adventure. Until then, have a great rest of your day, and bye for now.